Breaking palace sources have just intervened, raising urgent questions about Starmer's command of government, and their revelations about the Prime Minister's hold on power could spark the most severe constitutional crisis since 1936. In the last hour alone, 3 senior royal aides reached out to Westminster insiders with the same stark warning: the situation is slipping completely out of control. To follow how this unprecedented crisis unfolds, hit that subscribe button now, because the next 72 hours could reshape Britain for decades. The trigger came this morning at 9:47, when Starmer faced the House of Commons for what was meant to be routine Prime Minister's questions. His tone was defensive, his answers evasive, but it was his body language that stunned Parliament. 3 MPs in attendance reported that he appeared visibly shaken, gripping the dispatch box so hard his knuckles went white. When questioned on recent royal engagements, he dodged King Charles entirely, speaking only of constitutional procedure and boundaries. The chamber went silent, fully aware of the implications, but palace sources were unmoved. Within 90 minutes of that performance, the first call came in. A senior aide to King Charles, speaking anonymously, contacted Lord Peter Hennessy, Britain's leading constitutional expert, with a blunt, damning message: the Prime Minister has clearly misjudged his relationship with the Crown. The palace is now watching with unprecedented concern, a warning never before seen in modern British history. The monarchy does not comment on sitting prime ministers, question government leadership, or intervene, until now. Breaking protocol underscores just how serious this has become. In the Commons, when Conservative MP Sir Graham Brady asked whether Starmer still respected the constitutional role of the monarchy, his response was chilling: "I believe in democracy, accountability, and the will of the people." He never affirmed the Crown, instead framing democracy against monarchy, a trap every previous Labour leader, from Tony Blair to Jeremy Corbyn, carefully avoided. Starmer crossed that line entirely, and the fallout was immediate. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak condemned the remarks as constitutionally reckless, Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey demanded immediate clarification, and even SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn warned the PM was playing with constitutional fire. Inside Number 10, aides described total chaos, with one veteran official calling it the worst atmosphere under any government they've seen. Making matters worse, Labour's own polling unit ran emergency focus groups in core heartlands last night, and the results, leaked just 2 hours ago, are catastrophic. Constituencies once held by 15-point Labour margins now show alarming volatility. Voters are now expressing shock and a profound sense of betrayal over Starmer's apparent hostility to the Crown. Margaret Davis, a 71-year-old lifelong Labour voter from Durham, broke down during a focus group: "My grandfather fought in World War II for king and country, my father served in Korea, and now our own Prime Minister won't even say he supports the monarchy. I don't recognize my party anymore." A clip of her reaction, captured on a participant's phone, has already racked up 890,000 views on TikTok, with comments pouring in from lifelong Labour supporters, union members, teachers, nurses, and railway workers declaring they've turned their backs on the party. Meanwhile, British veterans who served Queen Elizabeth and now pledge loyalty to King Charles are watching in disbelief. Colonel Timothy Harrison, former commander of the Household Cavalry, gave an emotional interview this afternoon that has gone viral, describing Starmer's stance as an unforgivable betrayal of Britain's core values. "I took an oath to the Crown," he said, tears in his eyes. Thousands of others did the same. "We swore allegiance to the monarchy, not to politicians or parties. And now our Prime Minister won't even acknowledge it." Within 4 hours, the clip has been viewed 1.8 million times, sparking an outpouring of similar outrage from former service members across every branch of the armed forces. But the crisis runs even deeper. The Royal British Legion, representing 300,000 veterans and their families, held an emergency board meeting at 1 p.m. today, and 3 sources confirmed they debated issuing an unprecedented public statement criticizing the Prime Minister, something the Legion has never done in its 102-year history, having remained scrupulously neutral. Senior members argued that Starmer's conduct constitutes a fundamental breach of British values, and that staying silent would betray the veterans they represent. The vote was close, but the statement is being drafted and, according to multiple sources, could be released by tomorrow morning, marking the first time modern Britain's veteran community has openly opposed a sitting Prime Minister. Meanwhile, as veterans feel abandoned and working families struggle through the worst cost-of-living crisis in 4 decades, Starmer and his cabinet enjoy privileges that would make Marie Antoinette blush: £80,000 chauffeur-driven cars, taxpayer-funded second homes, and expense accounts covering meals far beyond what many families spend on groceries in a week. The gap is so stark, so obscene, that even traditionally neutral civil servants are expressing shock, with one Treasury official telling The Telegraph the disconnect feels almost dystopian. And while Starmer questions the monarchy's constitutional role, King Charles quietly channels millions from the Duchy of Cornwall into support for the armed forces, charities, homelessness initiatives, and environmental conservation, an unspoken rebuke in action. King Charles performs this work without taking a penny from the public purse, driven purely by service, real service, not political theater. Yet Starmer, earning £166,000 as Prime Minister plus expenses, refuses to even acknowledge that dedication. The contrast deepens. Documents obtained by GB News reveal that in the past fiscal year alone, Labour cabinet ministers claimed £847,000 on hospitality and entertainment, nearly £1 million, while food bank usage reached record highs. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting claimed £12,400 for meals and travel, Transport Secretary Louise Hay £8,900 for accommodation during parliamentary sessions. These aren't Conservatives, these are Labour ministers who campaigned on representing working families. The hypocrisy is staggering, and social media is exploding with outrage. Then, at 2:15 p.m., something unprecedented occurred. King Charles broke 70 years of royal protocol in a private reception for Commonwealth dignitaries at Buckingham Palace, delivering remarks that were meant to remain confidential. 3 attendees confirmed his words. "In times of political uncertainty," he said, with calm authority, "the continuity of our institutions becomes not just important, but essential." He paused, then added, "Those who serve the public are merely temporary custodians of something far greater and far older than any government or ideology." Everyone understood the stakes. This was no ceremonial platitude. King Charles was defending his institution against a prime minister who had openly questioned its legitimacy. Palace insiders confirmed the speech was unscripted, delivered spontaneously in direct response to Starmer's evasiveness just hours earlier. Within 30 minutes, markets reacted violently. The pound fell 0.7% against the dollar, UK government bond yields spiked, and £1.22 billion was wiped from the FTSE 100 in afternoon trading. Protests erupted outside Downing Street. What began as a political dispute has become a national emergency. Inside Number 10, panic reigns. Cabinet meetings have descended into shouting matches, MPs are whispering about leadership challenges, and senior civil servants are conducting emergency legal reviews of the Prime Minister's constitutional obligations. The Cabinet Secretary has requested an urgent meeting with the King, while constitutional lawyers debate whether reserve powers could be invoked. Polls show Labour collapsing, Reform UK surging, and Nigel Farage emerging as a serious contender. Britain now stands at a crossroads. The centuries-old balance between Crown and Parliament has been fractured. This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment a Prime Minister forgot that Britain's constitution is built on trust, tradition, and mutual respect. At the epicenter is Starmer, increasingly isolated, desperate, and exposed. The question now is simple: can he survive the next 72 hours, or is his premiership already over? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share this widely. Tomorrow morning, King Charles meets the Cabinet Secretary behind closed doors, and the outcome could change everything. What unfolds behind closed doors tomorrow could redefine British politics forever. Subscribe now, because the next chapter of this constitutional crisis drops in 24 hours, and the stakes have never been higher. By sunrise, Britain could already be living in a radically altered political reality. Senior Westminster figures admit they are bracing for events that were unthinkable just days ago. Emergency contingency plans are quietly circulating, senior judges have been alerted, and party whips are counting numbers not for legislation, but for survival. The ground is shifting beneath Starmer's feet at lightning speed. Overnight, pressure will intensify from every direction. Labour MPs in marginal seats are panicking, fearing electoral annihilation, with several instructing staff to draft statements distancing themselves from the Prime Minister's comments. Constituency offices report inboxes flooded with furious voters demanding Starmer affirm his loyalty to the crown, or risk losing lifelong support. For MPs dependent on fragile coalitions, this is an existential threat. Meanwhile, palace sources say King Charles remains outwardly composed but privately resolute, deeply disappointed, not angry. He believes the constitutional settlement's integrity must be defended, even if it sparks short-term turbulence. The palace knows that any further misstep could inflame tensions, but a growing consensus suggests silence is no longer an option if the Prime Minister continues to equivocate. International pressure is mounting fast. Diplomats from Canada, Australia, and several European nations have reportedly requested urgent briefings from the Foreign Office, seeking assurance that Britain's constitutional framework remains intact. Markets hate uncertainty, but allies fear instability even more, and Britain's reputation as a predictable, rules-based democracy is being quietly questioned in foreign capitals. What happens next hinges on one thing: whether Starmer backs down. A single, unequivocal statement affirming support for the constitutional monarchy could still defuse the crisis. But sources close to the Prime Minister insist he sees such a move as humiliation and capitulation. To allies, this is a matter of principle. To critics, it borders on self-destruction. Refusal could trigger the machinery of removal. A Labour leadership challenge could be launched within days. A cross-party parliamentary motion citing constitutional misconduct is already being drafted, and civil service legal reviews could determine historic consequences. This is no longer about politics or karma. It is about the survival of conventions that have held Britain together for centuries. Every prime minister is temporary, the crown endures. Whether Starmer grasps that truth may decide not only his fate, but the nation's direction for a generation. As the hours tick down, inevitability grips Westminster. Senior Labour figures who defended him yesterday are now shifting their language, speaking less of loyalty and more of stability and the national interest, and those words are no accident in British politics. Such moments are the prelude to a leader's downfall. When MPs stop asking whether a prime minister is right and start asking whether he is sustainable, the end is usually near. Behind closed doors, Labour's governing body is reportedly seeking legal advice on how quickly a leadership contest could be triggered under party rules. Publicly, they insist there are no plans, but privately they are preparing for every scenario, including Starmer resigning voluntarily to avoid the humiliation of being forced out. Some senior figures expect him to frame any departure as an act of principle, claiming he refused to bend to unelected power, but even his closest allies admit that narrative would not hold up. Meanwhile, public sentiment is hardening. Overnight polling shows trust in the Prime Minister collapsing not only among opponents but among soft Labour supporters and undecided voters. Support for the monarchy, by contrast, remains overwhelming across every demographic. This is not a culture war the country wants, and voters are making that clear. The more Starmer appears isolated, the more the crown stands as the stable constant in an increasingly volatile political landscape. What makes this moment especially perilous is the lack of an off-ramp, a prime minister unwilling to reassure the crown, a palace compelled to defend constitutional norms, markets rattled by uncertainty, and a fractured parliament all feed a self-reinforcing crisis. Each hour of silence, each ambiguous statement, amplifies the damage. Veteran MPs are privately comparing this to moments when leaders lost the confidence not just of their party, but of the system itself. Once that happens, authority drains fast, orders are questioned, decisions delayed, allies hedge, enemies advance, and power once lost rarely returns quietly. Hovering over everything is the reality that Britain's constitution depends on consent, not enforcement. It functions because all actors agree to honor their roles. When one player steps outside that understanding, the entire framework creaks. That is the fear gripping civil servants, diplomats, and political leaders alike. By this time tomorrow, Britain could witness a last-minute climb down by the Prime Minister, a decisive move by the governing party against its leader, or the opening of a constitutional confrontation unprecedented in modern times. None of these outcomes are positive, but all are now plausible. This is the moment when history compresses, when years of political assumptions collapse into days, sometimes hours. Whatever happens, Britain will not emerge unchanged. The only question remaining is how much damage will occur before the crisis breaks, and whether anyone still has the authority to stop it.